Hello, Garland Nixon here, and it's we're starting off 2025 on some very interesting notes, but we're going to talk about the liquidation of the EU, and by liquidation I mean the neoliberal economic model that is applied most frequently to corporations is now being applied to Europe. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and hello, 2025. Hello, Chicken Patty 13 and Sherry and everyone else, Raphael, everyone on the channel. Hello, 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 especially Chicken Patty. Chicken Patty, as you all know, she is the philosophical and moral foundation for this channel. Without her, none of us would be here. So let's move forward. All right. Oops. I got something going on here that's distracting me. I can't have like another video at the same time. One of me, like on the Rock Fin or Rumble or whatever, because I get distracted easily. I have ADD. If you might have noticed that watching my shows. All right, let's talk. I think it was interesting. When was thinking about the name for this video, it just popped to me: liquidation. The liquidation of it, right? And of the EU, because clearly the European economic bloc is being destroyed deliberately, and it's being destroyed by the ruling elite of the European Union at the behest of their masters in Washington, D.C. That's pretty clear. But there's a process to it. And when I thought about the process, I thought about, what is the neoliberal economic process? Why is it that the corporations are completely worthless in the United States? Why they don't operate well? Why they don't produce widgets and things properly? Why they don't do anything right? Because they're just financial tools, right? It's not a corporation anymore. If you own a corporation and you produce something or you have a service in this neoliberal model, some company that has a lot of money, BlackRock, Apollo, whatever comes in, take over your company, and then they liquidate it over a period of time. They one way or the other. One of the things they'll do is they'll see how much credit you have and they'll borrow all they can. You got a good, strong company and they buy it. And they find that your company has $150 million in credit. They'll borrow every dime. And then the owners of the company that bought your company will take that money and just call it consulting fees. Then they'll start seeing how they can get rid of workers. Let's trim down. Let's do whatever we can. And all they're doing is saying this company, which may have been built over 100 years, making whatever it is or providing a service, has certain values. And we want to extract all the value that we can. Getting rid of workers, they're going to suffer. Providing worse service, the customers are going to suffer. Taking out all of the economic and financial value, you can do that by, of course, selling off things that it has, taking out loans, whatever you can to get all the financial value out of that corporation. And then ideally, what you'd like to do is sell that husk of what used to be a corporation to somebody else. That's all. Just take everything from it, sell it to somebody else, or go bankrupt. Take everything out of it and then just bankrupt it. Meanwhile, you're going to combine it maybe with something else. Whatever you can do, it doesn't matter, because the concept is not a concept of creating value, be it through a service, be it through a good. No, the corporation is a financial tool that you can maximize profits from. Now let's go to Europe. The fact of the matter is, as you probably already know, particularly if you're in Europe, that Europe never didn't after World War II. We could talk about before, after World War II, particularly after the crash of of the British Empire. Certainly, Europe had no sovereignty, and the ruling elite of the Europeans, having lost their ability to do their colonization to go around the world and take everybody's stuff, whether it's Africa, South America. We want your gold, your silver, your diamonds, all that to make Europe strong. Having lost the capacity to do that after World War II, they latched onto the U.S. empire, saying, well, the U.S. can still do it. We'll latch onto the U.S. We'll do their bidding. We will subordinate our sovereignty to them. And in return, we will get the spoils of colonialism around the world, and rape and murder and theft and all the terrible things that you do to these lesser countries to get their stuff. Sure, we'll go along with that. And nothing is free, buddy. So ultimately, what did they have to give up? Their sovereignty for good. Not for a little while, not briefly, for good. And the most critical part of this whole scheme was that the people can't know about it. That's the critical part of it. The people in Europe had to believe that they had sovereignty, or it wouldn't work. They had to believe that they had independence, that they were individual countries. They couldn't know that they didn't have sovereignty because there are any number of reasons. How can you make an argument that you're standing up for democracy if the people know that you don't have democracy? How can you make an argument for any particular country being or doing anything if they don't really exist, if they're just appendages of the U.S. empire? So basically, you fool people, and the U.S. would give the European colonies just enough rope every now and then when they needed to make the people believe that they were an independent sovereign nation. So that the whole scheme, the whole trick was that, because how do you deal with it if the people in Europe find out that they don't have independence and sovereignty, right? You only got one or two options. You can grant them independence and sovereignty. That ain't much of an option, not a very profitable one. Or you simply take the mask off and say, all right, guys, this is a dictatorship and it is what it is. So deal with it. Shut up. You know, that's where we're getting in Europe. We're getting to the point where we're getting to the level where the people are becoming aware that they don't have independence and sovereignty. And the option of continuing the fraud is starting to melt away. And as we can see, let me give you some examples real quick. Let me give you a couple examples. Let me find a good one. Here's an example. Perfect example. Let's look at this. Hungary loses EU funding amid rule of law dispute. Brussels claims the country has failed to tackle corruption and implement reforms, while Budapest says it's met all its requirements, right? So what's happening here? The Hungarian leadership does not want to openly abandon its sovereignty. It doesn't want to go along with the Western Europe concept that you have no sovereignty, you will give up your sovereignty. And if it comes to the point where you have to be sacrificed, your economy has to be sacrificed, and your citizens have to be sacrificed, you'll just go along with it. The leadership of Hungary says, no, we don't want to do that. We got to look out for ourselves. Now, what does the EU say? Well, you're dealing with corruption. We can't have that, so we're going to cut off your money. They ain't cutting off their money for corruption. Let me find another one. Let me find. Now, what's going on now? Well, here we go. This darn thing's spinning. There we go. We'll see if this will work. There we go. Orban, Brussels has always wanted change of government in Hungary. Loyalty is the essence of sovereignty. Hungary's prime minister said in an interview with the Patriotic YouTube channel, right? So what's going on now? Quite simple. They're saying to Hungary, you have to abandon your sovereignty and do what you're told, and it's going to hurt your people. You're probably going to be destroyed, and you might be dragged into a war and nuked and just completely sacrificed. You might, we'll say there's a gigantic superpower on your, right on your border. You're going to have to fight that superpower, which you will have no chance of fighting, and you'll all be killed. And you're going to have to do that on behalf of a superpower that's half a world away, that can't stand you and could just as soon sacrifice you as they would, drink a cup of tea. You're going to have to fight the people that don't want to fight you. Russia doesn't want to fight you. Russia wants to be friends with you. The U.S. doesn't want that. It wants to go after Russia. So that means you have to be impoverished and die. And the leadership of Hungary, the leadership of Slovakia said no. Now, what else is happening? You got other countries like Romania. In Romania, what's happened? They had an election, and there was a guy who wasn't down with the complete abandonment of all sovereignty and with being used as cannon fodder in the war against Russia, the U.S. war against Russia. And so this guy was obviously winning because the people of Romania kind of want to live and eat. And the court came along. This is interesting. The court in Romania came along and they ruled that the Russians had bought ads on TikTok that influenced the election, and therefore the election was illegitimate, and the winner didn't win. I guess I don't know if they're going to redo it or whatever, but this guy won, and they said we're going to annul that election because Russia bought videos on TikTok in support of you. Now, we have since then found out that Russia didn't buy the videos on TikTok, that it was an EU-connected opposition group that bought them. So it appears like a total setup. Like the EU opposition group bought these videos on TikTok and then said, hey, those videos on TikTok that we bought, yeah, why don't we just use them and we'll say they're Russian videos and then we can annul our election. So what happens in Romania, I don't know, but I can tell you one thing that's going on in Romania, in Slovakia, in Hungary, and that is the contradiction between the US and EU's rhetoric about sovereignty and democracy and independence and opposition to autocracy is being revealed. The contradictions between their rhetoric and their actions are being revealed. They say we're for sovereignty and all these things. Georgia, on and on, all throughout Eastern Europe. What are the connections that we have? Georgia, Slovakia, Hungary, now Romania, on and on, all throughout Eastern Europe. These are countries that are realizing we're on the front lines. You want to start a war with a superpower that's right next to us, a nuclear superpower. And if that happens, we will die. And even if it doesn't happen, you've started an economic war with us, and it's kind of cold. We won't have energy to keep ourselves warm and eat. We won't have an economy, and we will die. All roads lead to the same outcome. We will die of starvation. We'll be impoverished. No. The answer is no. And so what's happening? So the EU, Brussels, and the U.S. empire are ratcheting up the pressure on these countries, saying, no, you can't have sovereignty. Ain't happening. Look at England. Look at Europe. They're perfectly happy not to have sovereignty. They're the most the feckless vassals that this world could imagine. And look at them. The people are being impoverished. They're going to freeze to death. If we could drag them into a war, we would. But it looks like Trump may screw that all up. But the bottom line is this: do you see the Germans in the streets screaming, "Hey, don't impoverish us"? Nope. Do you see the UK? Do you see the citizens of the UK in the streets? Is it V for Vendetta time? Or do they have on Guy Fawkes? Nope. 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 They're just as happy. Before you know it, the Germans will be out voting again. Hey, we want the AfD. No, we want this. They're being sacrificed. Marched right to the slaughterhouse. And the UK, hey, Keir Starmer's a bad guy. Let's go with Farage. Let's go with it. Bad news, guys. There is no element in the ruling elite in Germany or in the UK that's going to save you. That's just not going to happen. Bad news, you ain't voting your way out of this one, because the people whoever's in charge is being bribed or threatened. They have a saying, I can't remember what it is in I'll tell you what it is. Plato o plomo. That's right. Plato o plomo, right? Is a Colombian Spanish slang phrase that translates to silver or lead. A person saying the phrase is telling the listener to either accept a bribe, plata, meaning silver, a common slang term for money in Colombia, or lose their life, plomo, a metonym for lead bullet, right? So, plata o plomo, the silver or the lead. And the ruling elite all know how the game works with the US. And the lead doesn't have to mean they'll put a bullet in you, but it could. But it could simply mean they, first of all, they will expose what you did on Epstein Island. They will expose some other terrible thing that they got you involved in. They will expose some of your corruption because they're corrupt as hell. So the ruling elite in Europe are facing a plato o plomo situation. Either do what you're told, take the bribe, sacrifice your country, or you're going to pay a dear price for it. So we're in a situation where there's a problem in Europe for the U.S. empire. That is, you got the most economically suicidal vassals that this world has ever seen in Europe and in Western Europe. The French, they ain't too happy about it, but what are they? They ain't gonna do much. They're going. Look what's happened. You know, they voted, and Macron said, "Yeah, nah, that's not gonna work." And what did the French do? They went down the street and got some freaking baguettes and a cup of wine and drank their troubles away. That's it. Now they're going to try to vote their way out of evil. France, you already voted your way out of that. How did that work out? How did this great European democracy work out in France when they said, hey, we don't like this, we're voting a different direction? And the banker, Macron, said, you won, but you lost. They did. Look, what did they do? They did a Romania. In Romania, what happened to people voted? We want that guy. And they said, oh, he got the most votes. Yeah, that means he loses. That's what Macron said. Hey, guys, you voted in all these people. Yes, I did. And you voted new parties in. Right. Yeah, that means I'm putting the old people back in. So thanks a lot. It was a message to you to let you know that the whole system, it's not corrupt. It's not that the political system in the UK or in France or in Germany is a corrupt system. That you would be far better if it were a corrupt system. Corruption can be fixed. This ain't a corrupt system. It's a fake. It is a mask. It's a veneer of democracy. It is the appearance of a system where no system exists. It is the appearance of a democratic machine. Hey, you've got a parliament. You've got a prime minister, in some places a prime minister and a president, right? And so everything looks like a democracy, but it don't act like a democracy. You see, my friends, you can call it a democracy. You can dress it up like a democracy, but how do you figure out if it's a democracy? And even then, the word democracy shouldn't apply, because I put it this way. Even then, it doesn't matter if it's a democracy or not. The way you judge a government is by outcomes. How about I've said this before? You've heard me say this. If you're in a relationship, you get a new girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever the case may be. I'm just saying, I'm not being gender specific. If you're a woman, you get a new boyfriend. If you're a guy, you get a new girlfriend. And I mean, you're taking it no further than that. And you're with this person for a year. One of the ways to judge the relationship is look at both of your lives. Am I better off than I was 4 years ago? You know that they say that in elections here, right? You look and you say, well, I met Mary. That's her name. And I've been dating Mary. What's happening? And you're looking around and you say, wow, my house is cleaner. Mary came over there and taught me how to clean the house up. Yay. Ooh, I've lost 5 pounds. Mary has influenced me. She said, stop eating that fake crap and drinking 10 beers a day. And I've stopped. Hey, my clothes are nicer. Mary has taught me how to match my clothes. And yeah, how many guys do we look? I'm gonna tell you like this. I got a couple of buddies that's the story. They met a woman and she turned them from a slimy pig into a human being. That's a story that happens to most guys because most of us are slimy pigs. All right. And at the end of that time, you can review your life. You don't even have to look at her, nothing. Look at your life. Am I better off? A year later, and all your friends are saying, Garland, you got a haircut now. And your car's washed every now and then, and your home's cleaner, and you seem to be you got money in the bank. Man, you should marry that girl. She's making your life better. She's the one. She put up with you, marry her. We've seen that. I've had guys, but buddies around have said, dude, you need to marry that chick. She's straightening your life out. You were a pile of crap before that, right? We've heard that. And what are they saying? I am judging outcomes. Likewise, we've had people that have met a person that, and at the end of 6 months, you're like, dude, you ain't looking so good. She's turning into a crackhead. Get rid of her. You're going to be Hunter Biden in a couple of months here. You're going to have a laptop with hookers involved. You're smoking pipe off of a hooker's butt and stuff. We don't want you to go the Hunter Biden direction, dude. You got to let her go. What are they saying? They're judging by outcomes. Outcomes, right? They could be wrong. They could be confused. They could not see what's happening behind the scenes. But whatever the case, people are judging by outcomes. Well, in a country, imagine this. There is a king. It is a monarchy. The people are well fed. The people are safe. The people have good jobs and everybody's happy. And there's a chicken in every pot, et cetera, et cetera. And people say, you know what? I like the king. He sure keeps our country safe and well and happy and healthy and all that stuff, right? Well, do they need a democracy? They're happy with a monarch. The outcome is one that everybody in the country is fine. It could be a country that's a socialist country. Take China. China's a socialist country. I don't care if you like socialism or not. That's not China's problem. The people of China, 90% of the people in China support the government. Why? Because they pulled so many people out of poverty. They were poorer than Haiti, and now they're not. The outcome is fine for the people of China. So we got an outcome. They're good. Let's look at Germany and the UK. How are the outcomes there? Those countries are going to hell. Get out. Kind of like a sinking ship. If you're in Germany, if you're in Western Europe, and you can leave and you can afford to get out, might be a good idea, because it ain't going in a good direction. The outcomes say get rid of what you have. The problem is what you have is a fraud. That's the big thing here. That's the big thing. What you have is not a government. So you can't, it's like this. You can't vote your way out of it, because the people who are in charge of your country don't work for you. They work for the US. They work for Washington, D.C. to take you out. And they're doing a pretty damn good job of it. And unless you rise up yourselves and find a way to change things, it ain't happening. And right now, I don't see any evidence of that in Europe. It could change, but I don't see any evidence of that. The Germans wouldn't go to a protest unless you get the government sent them a letter with a time and date and instructions of what to put on their signs. And you know what they tell them to put on their signs? They tell them to have blue and yellow signs and put "I support Ukraine," and they do it. So Germany, they got this guilt from World War II, from the Holocaust that they're dealing with. That's a whole nother show. And of course, this weird and strange trust for their captors, trust for their oppressors. At least the UK has woken up enough to say, hey, gosh, perhaps we're being oppressed here. They're starting to move in the right direction, but they're still like walking around thinking the king is a good idea. That's up to them. They're happy with the king. I'm happy with the king. I'm just saying ain't nothing working out for you in the UK. You are being sacrificed, liquidated, my friends, neoliberally liquidated. What are they doing? Think about this. One of the things that Biden passed was this Inflation Reduction Act. And the Inflation Reduction Act made it easier and created rewards for companies, industry that shut down in Europe and moved to the US. At the same time, they cut Europe off of cheap Russian energy and started selling Europe energy that's 5 to 7 times more expensive. So what Biden did was he just said, right out in the open, I'm de-industrialized. Come on, what kind of dummy wouldn't figure that out? What are you doing? What are you going to do, Joe Biden? Number one, I'm going to make it too expensive for industry to exist in Europe. Okay, number two, I'm going to make it very easy and rewarding for industry to leave the hell out of Europe and come here. I think you can figure that out. What's going on here? We're deindustrializing Europe. See, when Biden or Trump say we're bringing good jobs back, they know they ain't coming back from China. We don't have the workforce that they have. We don't have the infrastructures that they have to move this stuff around and to run the electrical grid and all that crap is old. So they know that we're not bringing the jobs back from China. So when Biden or Trump says we're bringing the good jobs back, they mean reindustrialization. And what do they mean by that? From where, might I ask? Let's work together and try to figure this out. They ain't coming back from China or Bangladesh, but there is a block. Let's just call it Europe. And they're dramatically increasing the prices of operation for corporations and creating windfalls for corporations that move here. I think we can figure out what their plan is to bring the good jobs back to the United States, and that is to get them the hell out of Europe. And it's kind of like this. Look, Europe, you rode on our backs for a while. We kept you going. You were able to be fairly wealthy for quite a while since World War II, and because the U.S. was going around doing all the evil things that we do, overthrowing countries, doing whatever. You were right there with us. Great. Now times are getting hard. China and Russia are rising. All this industry and money around the world and other areas that we can't control is rising. Things ain't going so well for us. Somebody's got to go. Unfortunately for you, you have ridden on us along with us for long enough. And now that we're hungry, your dinner. You're the ones that are going to eat, and they're going to go in, and it's pure neoliberalization. Liquidate the country. Only they don't have to buy the company. They don't have to buy Europe. They already own it, and they're going in there. And now what's interesting is that they're liquidating Europe, right? And they're still maintaining the argument that Europe is sovereign and independent, and that they're doing it for good reasons. Think about this. We're going after Viktor Orban. Why? Because he won't stop corruption. Let me show you something. Let me find it. We're going after Orban. Why? Corruption, that's good stuff, man. We're good guys. We don't like corruption. Here's an interesting article. Okay, so James Curso Durso has written this article, right? And look at it. Hold Ukraine accountable for corruption and misspent aid. What a joke. Hold Ukraine accountable. Might I add, the United States overthrew the government of Ukraine. There ain't no such thing as Ukraine. Okay? If it's corrupt, then it's corrupt because its masters want it to be corrupt. Start here. But let's look at this article. The shame of American military assistance in Iraq and Afghanistan is that while our troops, blah, 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 the leaders were getting rich. So he starts off by saying Iraq and Afghanistan, while we were fighting bravely for what? For oil, for imperialism, our allies were getting rich. We've seen something even worse in Ukraine. While Ukrainian military personnel civilians fight valiantly in a fierce contest for independence. And he starts off lying. There's nobody in Europe that has independence, including Ukraine. Ukrainian leaders have gotten fabulously wealthy. So have American leaders. Ukrainian leaders have gotten fabulously wealthy, and American leaders have gotten fabulously wealthy. Now, here's what's interesting. The writing is on the wall, the direction things are going, because the next paragraph shows that this would not be allowed before, say, a Trump victory. It wouldn't be allowed. The American shame is that, listen to this, the U.S. heedlessly expanded NATO to the borders of Russia. They're starting to set the table to get the hell out of Ukraine. And then after Russia pushed back, no, Russia didn't push back, Russia kicked ass and took names, enabled and funded the cynical maladministration of the Zelensky government, which will go down in history as one of the greatest examples of waste and theft of Western aid. It was never aid, it was graft and corruption. So now Zelensky, you, sir, are the scapegoat. You got to love that, don't you? Zelensky is the scapegoat. They overthrow the government of Ukraine. They put in a puppet government. They do a CIA operation to get Zelensky in power. They launder money and weapons through Ukraine on a scale that has never been seen on this earth. And then they blame the puppet that they put in power. You got to love that. Ukraine's casualties have permanently altered the country's democracy and will limit its prospects for economic recovery, leaving the country wrecked in the scene of a future frozen conflict. Well, you're F right. Russia ain't going to allow frozen conflict, A, and B, the country is wrecked. They're casualties. Well, wait a minute. Before that, you said they were fighting valiantly. No, they're not. They're fighting as puppets and they're getting wiped out. How about this? The real crime of the Zelensky administration began in late 2023. And then they go for an article with Zelensky, and it said that without a substantial technological edge, Ukraine would face a stalemate. He said traditional attritional strategies were insufficient to overcome the numerical advantage of the Russian forces. So now they get back to now old Azov Zelensky is now the hero. And they're now saying that, oh, we're going to go back to if we'd only done other things, they would have won. They talk about the need for technological advances, blah, blah, blah. Listen to this. April of 2024, that's last year, the leadership of Ukraine's military intelligence participated in a series of roundtable discussions at Washington think tanks. They expressed their reservations about continuing full-scale conventional warfare. So they were like, we got to get out of here. We're being killed. They were concerned that Ukraine had lost momentum that it never had and would be overwhelmed, which it always would. They advocated instead for increased asymmetric warfare inside Russia to gain an upper hand in negotiations to end the war. Right? So, okay, so we're going to go do terrorism. That's what they said, asymmetric. So they said, let's do terrorism, right? So they go on. The waste and corruption only spread from there. They wasted billions more on European munitions. More scandals arose. They talk about somebody buying faulty equipment for astronomical prices. Zelensky prevented his military commanders from openly speaking the truth about Ukraine's chances to break through the stalemate. Look at this crap. So now they're going to blame, and they end up by saying this. Total aid from the U.S. and its Western allies totals $260 billion, $250 billion. It's past time Washington stopped letting corrupt officials steal American aid, right? Let's say this. You should have known this was coming. They're going to blame Ukraine now. Guess who else they're going to blame? This is what's really going to be sweet. Why did I go through all that? They're starting the blame game is starting because they've lost. They're going to blame Europe. They're going to pull a Hillary Clinton. Remember when Hillary Clinton lost and they asked her whose fault it was, and she blamed literally, she blamed the DNC and the New York Times. The Clinton people ran the DNC, paid all their bills. They were in charge of the DNC. The DNC was a fraud. It was just a cat's paw for the Clinton administration. The New York Times printed everything they told them to print. And in the end, when she lost, she blamed the DNC and the New York Times. And now what are the neocons going to do? What are the Trump people going to do? They're going to say, well, the problem here clearly is the Ukrainians and the Europeans. They've set the Europeans up, impoverished them, robbed them blind, created a extremist armed organization on the European continent, Azov and its allies, who are going to be furious and probably strike Europe all over the place with the weapons that they have. They've created that, just disastrously economically wiped out Europe. And in the end, what are they going to do? They're going to blame Ukraine and they're going to blame Europe. And you know what they're going to say? This is what they're going to say clearly. It's your fault, Europe, so you got to pay for it. You should have done fill in the blank differently. You shouldn't have done fill in the blank. And bottom line, Europe's getting blamed. It's coming. It's guaranteed, guaranteed. Europe will be blamed. And Ukraine, what they'll say is this: why, if only all that money we sent, 260 billion, if we'd have sent that Ukraine and they'd have used it properly, they'd have won the war in a month, a week, a day, an hour, a minute. Why, if only they'd have used all of the money that we gave them properly, they'd be fine. But no, they stole it all, which they did. And so therefore, we just, bottom line is this: we just can't give them any more money. We're gonna have to walk away from this. Europe, yeah, it's yours. So they're going to leave Europe. First of all, they're going to liquidate Europe's assets. They're going to take their industry. They're going to sell them gas and things like that, energy, for 3, 4, 5 times what the Russians would sell them. They're going to make them sign deals with those 10-year deals that they have with like Russia. They'll sign 10-year deals, and the ruling elite will. See, here's what they do. I guarantee you this is coming. What the ruling elite will do is this: they will sign a 10-year deal with these Texas oil and Texas LNG companies for some exorbitant price. It'll be like, yes, we're signing a 10-year deal with American LNG companies. Really? Do we have a locked-in price? No, whatever. We have agreed to a price, and the price is whatever is on the world market times 5. Literally, they're gonna be like, yeah, well, whatever the market is, if it's $1 a cubic foot, then we pay $5 a cubic foot. We've signed a deal. Why is that? So that when they leave, you can't fix it, right? They're going to set it up so that when and if, and they're going to try to stop you from voting them out. But let's just say you're in the UK or Germany, and you vote out the fruitcakes, and you bring in somebody, the AFD, who ain't your answer. But here's the thing: they'll probably say, we don't want war with Russia. Okay, fair enough. Doggone you. You won't have war with Russia and get yourself nuked. We're not happy about that. But we already took your industry, number one. And oh, by the way, you are now in a country that has a 10-year, if not longer, probably 99-year, if they can get away with it, contract with the U.S. to buy LNG at 9 million times the price of the world market. They're going to, and so how are you going to survive? You're going to come in with a new government, and that government will fall because people say, oh, you're going to make it better, and they're going to say, but we can't, because the old people locked us into these deals with the U.S. and we're paying way more than market price, so we're screwed. And they're going to say, the people ain't going to understand. They just wanted to get better. And then, of course, all the media will be there accusing them of lies and corruption and, whatever the case may be. And there you go. No way out for Europe. No way out for Germany. And of course, as German industry, Italian industry, French industry collapses, everything else falls along with it. So, and bad news. Just when you thought it was really, really bad, the situation is going to get far worse. And how so? Those people going around flying these Israeli flags. Yay, we support Israel. Hooray, hooray. Israel, Israel, Israel. Ooh, they got the dictator Assad. Dictator Assad is out. Syria is free to be run by a democratic organization. And I think we know who that democratic organization is, right? So Syria is good. Everything's wonderful. Well, let me tell you what I suspect is going to happen in Syria, or what used to be Syria. There will be a armed resistance, because you've got people who are, the head chopping, the alphabet groups. They will then do things similar to what the Israelis are doing, similar to what the Ukrainian leadership's doing. Same mindset. They're going to come in and say, those who are not like us are lessers and should be dealt with. If it's Ukraine, it's the Russians. You got to outlaw the Russian everything, Russian dressing, Russian food, Russian church, Russian language, everything Russian has to be outlawed. You have no rights if you're Russian. If you're in Israel, if you're not of a particular religion, you have no rights, and you'll most likely be bombed and burned to death in a tent. Annihilated, same thing. And of course, in Syria, what do you know? mysteriously, shockingly, we will get the exact same dynamic. And they've already started. Ooh, you're a Christian, you're an Alawite. Isn't it interesting? The United States is sponsoring the mass genocide of Palestinians, many of who are Christians, Palestinian Muslims. In Ukraine, the outlawing of a particular sect of Christianity, the Russian Orthodox style, which is a sect of Christianity, same as Catholicism, or you can be various sects of Jehovah's Witnesses, and on and on. I could go with all these various sects of Christianity, and they're outlawing them in and killing them in Ukraine. Outlawing them, pretty much just killing them, slaughtering them, and they are wiping them all out in Israel. And guess what's happening in Syria now? Oh, you're an Alawite. Oh, you're a Christian. You're a whatever. We're going to bomb your church and we're going to kill you. Same exact thing. And I'm going to guess that's going to cause it's going to spread, because there will certainly be an armed resistance, which I suspect will be heavily armed by other entities outside of the country who have a stake in this. And you're going to have a nasty armed resistance, instability, which will spread probably into Turkey. And you're going to have a whole bunch of people from the Middle East showing up in Europe. That's right. You think you got problems now. You think people are showing up from all over the world now, from these destabilized regions. Well, they're taking your jobs, they're taking your money, they're taking your future, they're impoverishing you, and they're making you pay like hell for everything you get. You will be driven into poverty. And B, you will be flooded with refugees who will be poorer than you are, who will be more desperate than you are, and who will be even angrier than you are, because the ruling elite of your country went to their region and wiped everything out and destroyed everything. And now there's a bunch of head chopping ISIS members who are in charge, and your ruling elite put them in charge. And you know what they're going to do? You're going to have a Christmas market and they're going to drive a truck into it. You're going to have a holiday parade and they're going to bomb and do terrible, terrible things because they're pissed. And they're pissed at the ruling elite, but the ruling elite ain't the ones that are going to suffer. The poor schlubs that are going to a beer festival in Gurpingen, they're the ones that are going to get it. Hey, everybody, a stein of beer. Hey, what's that sound? And there's a truck coming. Right over 50 people, all dead. Why? Because some guy from the Middle East is really, really pissed because Israel or some group dropped the bomb on his family and killed everybody. And he came over here and he's going to get some get backs, as they say on the street. That's the future of Europe. Impoverishment, desperation, and all hell. I mean, look, what they're doing, they'll be hellified. Or as they say, as Cartman would say, there'll be hella immigrants coming, but they won't be immigrants. They will be by international law. They will be legitimate refugees. Under international law, they will be legitimate refugees because these lunatics went over there and started a war, and there will be fighting, and they will be running from the fighting. And under international law, that's refugees. There ain't no way around that. They're going to load you up with more refugees and cheap labor, I might add. Refugees, but to us, it's, hey, there's refugees and maybe competition for jobs and all that kind of stuff. To the rich people, it's going to be refugees. Hey, cheap labor. Isn't that just wonderful? They're going to be thrilled, happy. And things ain't going to be so settled for you in Western Europe. Might I add, it gets worse. You see, my dear and fluffy friends, they're destabilized. They have totally destabilized Ukraine, the largest country in Europe, all of these people in Ukraine. And when this war ends, and it looks like it may soon, you have a whole bunch of people of a questionable ideology, shall we say, that one that was quite popular by a certain mustachioed gentleman from Austria in the mid-1900s, early to mid-1900s. You have a bunch of people who are going to get the hell out of there because the Russians have said, we got to do denazification, and they're going to be afraid that they'll be found out and they're going to get the hell out of there. And then you're going to have people involved in war crimes and all terrible things. They're all going to be getting out of there. Where do you think they're going to go? To Russia? They ain't going east, pal. They're going west. So you're going to be flooded with refugees from the Middle East, which will open up Africa, whatever. Or they'll all be flooded. Europe, done. Filled, loaded with Africans, Middle Easterners, and those will be the good refugees, pal. Those will be the ones there, because there'll be a few terrorists in there that are just pissed for whatever reason they came over, and they'll bomb the hell out of you. But the worst are going to be the Ukrainians, because they're going to be furious at Europe. They're going to say, you did this to us. You did this to our country, and then you abandoned us. And for that, you must pay. And the ruling elite ain't going to be the ones paying. Now, certainly every now and then they're going to have some man pads and the ability to shoot down low-flying aircraft. So they'll hang around the airport somewhere, Heathrow, whatever. Plane takes off, boom, bad things are coming as a result of this. It is what it is. And now Trump's coming. Oh, that ain't good news for you guys in Europe. That ain't good news. You know, Trump has already said, I would. Some think it's good news, which in a way it is, because at least you won't be nuked if he can. Trump, to be honest with it, let me say this, and it is important to say this in the context of this conversation. The Biden liberal class referred to Trump as a fascist. I don't consider Trump a fascist. I tell you why. Because one of the hallmarks of fascism, in my interpretation of that particular term, is a commitment to war. A commitment to war. And I don't believe that Trump has that commitment to war. If he had that commitment to war, there's no way he'd want to stop this any war ever. Look at the Biden administration. I consider that more fascism. Why? Because of their commitment to war. They're committed to war everywhere, and Trump ain't. So you can call him whatever you want to, but he doesn't have that fundamental commitment to war. I think that is required for my personal definition of fascism. Part of my personal definition of fascism came from, I love to read. Here's an interesting book if you can find it. It's pretty damn expensive. Fascism and the Far Right, the Routledge Companion. And in that, this is a great book because you don't have to read it in the end. You can jump all over the place. There's a lot of history, a lot of historical reference in it. And it's an interesting book, and you can find various things that you can use to interpret your own. I think you got to come up with your own definition of fascism in this day and age, as ideologies become blurred. But at any rate, so what Trump's doing is this economic liquidation. So Trump is going to be like, look, we don't need a war. We'll all get nuked. So I'm going to end the war. And there are going to be people in Europe that say, yay, if he's able to do it. I'm guessing, I think yes. It could be a no. I'm going to guess yes. I could be wrong. The war it's going to end at some time. And let's face it, Ukraine's running out of people, running out of money. Europe's running out of money, and the U.S. ain't giving up any money anymore. It's going to be hard. Hey, I'm going to keep driving. Really? How's your gas needle look? It's on E. You ain't going to keep driving far. What else is happening? My little oil light's coming on. Looks like I have no oil pressure. Maybe I'm out of oil. Anything else? Yeah, and you just go on. Yeah, my battery thing is, wait a minute, the lights just cut off and everything. Hey, the car just died. You ain't driving any further. You're out of gas. You're out of oil. Your battery's dead. You ain't driving any further. And so I tend to think that the Ukraine conflict will end soon, simply because the only people that got the wherewithal to fight is Russia. Russia's like, yeah, we're set. We can keep rolling. Ukraine, you got any money? Nah, weapons, all out. Hey, Europe, can you give us some money or weapons? We got nothing. The only people, ironically, how about the U.S.? You out of your mind? We give you another stinking dime. That's what Trump's going to say. Now, here's what's interesting. Does anybody, if they looked around Europe, they're like, does anybody have any more money to give to Russia? No. Anybody, anywhere, got a pennies. Well, Russia's got money. It's in this assets that we stolen from Russia. Oh, so the only people in Europe that actually can afford to fight Russia is Russia. Yes. They're all broken poor. So here's my point. I think the war ends fairly in 2025 at some point. Because how do you fight with nothing? With no weapons, no ammunition, no money. And I don't think Trump's going to keep going with it. I don't think he's going to do that. He staked too much on it. I mean, people are like, oh, he's going to do a reversal. He staked a lot on that. He staked his reputation. He staked everything on ending that. I don't think Trump gives that up. I think he is looking for a way to end it. And here's the thing about it. So people think he won't. Okay. Let's just say for the sake Trump didn't end it. If he didn't end it, he'd have to give him more money. If he says, all right, well, we're going to keep going, he'd have to then go to Congress. Hey, can I get another 40 billion for Ukraine? Trump ain't doing that. And MAGA would go ape shit if he did it. MAGA would go nuts. Trump would lose. He'd spend all of his capital. All of the political capital that Donald Trump has would be spent. Boop, bank account empty. If he suddenly reversed course and said, I'm moving forward. So I could be wrong. I don't think he does. I think he wants the hell out. But just because he wants out of the Ukraine conflict doesn't mean he's going to let you off the hook, Europe. Far worse. He's going to then say, look, he already said it. Look, here's what we're going to do. You're going to give us more money out of your GDP. After they took all the money out of your GDP by impoverishing you. How neoliberal is that? You know what I mean? They're going to be like, look, we're going to impoverish you. We'll start by making sure you don't have a dime. Like, this is what they're doing in the UK. We're going to make sure you don't have a dime. Broke, impoverished, laid off, screwed. Right. Yeah. Then what? Then we're going to raise your taxes and the government's going to take more of your money. You gotta love these people, right? Where's the Guy Fawkes mask, baby? Where's the Guy Fawkes mask? They should be on by now, but I guess they're not going to be on. Maybe once it's too late. But my point is, so now Trump, old Trumpy, is just going to say, you're not at war. I've saved that, but you can't go back to Russian energy. I got good news and bad news. The good news is you're not at war with Russia. The bad news is we still got to milk you for every stinking dime you have. You're broke and you're impoverished, but you got a little bit left. You know what he's going to do? You know what he's going to do? It's going to be like this. You ever take a dish rag or something, and you squeeze it until all the water comes out, and you look at it and you're like, it still has a little bit of dampness. And you think if you squeeze it real hard, you can get a few more drops of moisture out of it. That's Europe. That's Europe. Biden has squeezed them. Yeah. We take the money. We take everything they got, their sovereignty, their manhood, their everything they have, their dignity and respect. We're taking it all. And Trump comes in and he looks around and says, you know, I think they might have a couple drops of money left. And maybe even a little dignity. And we can't have that, can we? No. So he's squeezing that rag a little tighter to get the last few drops of dignity and subsequently money out of Europe. And what do you do with an old dish rag when you finish with it? Throw it aside. And you happen to be on that dish rag, Europe. And that's your fate. It is what it is. Don't hate the messenger, but if you don't take to the streets and act in a manner that the ruling elite cannot control, yeah, it's all you get. That's your future. It's not your future. It's your present. It's already started. Look. They've done this green thing. And they're like, okay, we're going to go to electric vehicles and you're not going to be able to use electric leaf blowers and stuff like that, right? Really? And what are you going to do? I'm going to fly around in a private plane and sit in the back of a limo that gets like 1 mile an hour. 1 mile per gallon. They're driving in these gigantic limos, and they got like 10 cars in the front and 10 Suburbans behind them with guards and all of that. So they're burning like, as much. They've got like a convoy of vehicles that they travel in that burns as much gas as you'll burn in a year just to go to a meeting. And you got to cut back and drive a car that is not going to work the way you want it to work. It's not going to do what you want it to do. And they're flying around and they're doing all this. They got yachts. You ever see the size of some of these yachts? Hey, Bezos, whoever, bought another $500 million yacht. And you look at the thing, it ain't a yacht, it's a ship. And you're like, so Jeff Bezos has a fleet of planes. He's got a fleet of ships that we'll call yachts. He's got houses all over the place. He burns more fuel in an hour than me and everybody I know will burn in 10 lifetimes. And I got to cut back. I got to fix my carbon footprint. It's not, look, listen, I am an environmentalist guy. I believe in doing the best we can for the environment. I believe in cutting back on pollution, period. And if there's a way that we can find that we can get electric cars that do 1,000 miles per charge, I'm good. You get 1,000 kilometers. You got to get up 500 to 1,000 kilometers before you talk in my language, right? Before that, I ain't trying to hear it. And might I add, what's my electric bill going to look like? I mean, I got to take everything into account here. You got to make it advantageous to me. WIIFM. WIIFM. What is in it for me to switch to whatever it is, electrical vehicles or anything else? You got to make something in it for me to get me to do it. But they're not doing that. Ain't the way they work. The way they work is you will do what you're told and shut up, or else. They're authoritarians. And so now, in their quest to switch all of their factories to electric vehicles, which people didn't buy, in this massive inflation where they're paying unbelievable amounts for all the parts to build vehicles and build things. And of course, they're impoverishing the people who would buy these things, which are the consumers. So I got a factory, and the people in my factory buy what I make. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay them off and move that factory to the US. And then I'm going to keep the prices the same or raise them. And then I'm going to put those prices, those products on the shelf for somebody to buy. But I laid off everybody who could buy them, so nobody can afford to buy them. And then I go crapped out, and I'm out of business. So they're creating a dynamic where they can't even stay in business. The whole thing is crumbling, and they know it, and they don't care because their job is to ignore it. Because they're going to be taken care of. You know what, Schultz or Baerbock or any of these crooks, you ain't worried about it. You're always going to be taken care of. So your job as the economy of your country crumbles because of your own doing, your job is to do this. I can't hear you. Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. The other problem they got is you ending the war. Look, you're being impoverished and screwed over. As long as the war is going on, they can say, well, we've got to do that because Putin could get the Donbass. We can't have that. Putin could get this. Putin could get that. Putin's going to come kill us. He's going to attack us. He's going to slaughter us. Now, what happens now if they get a deal? And it's like, hey, you told us Putin was going to kill us all and slaughter us, and he was going to attack us, and he wasn't going to stop till he got and he hasn't done any of that. And now I got to ask, why did I suffer? Why did I lose everything? And why am I still suffering? Okay, if I suffered to stop Putin, why am I suffering now? Putin stopped. Trump got to deal with him. If that happens, I'm just saying if that happens. How do they answer that question? And people are going to say, okay, now that the war's over, and maybe during wartime, let's just say they believe this lunacy, but during wartime, we were suffering terribly during wartime. We had to suffer, but you got to do that to stop Putin, right? Now that the war is over, and there's a peace deal, and we now can go back to what we were doing and have a great life. What do you think? Ruling elite Europe, they're going to be like, well, that ain't exactly how it works, guys. Bad news and worse news. The bad news is things ain't going to get better. The bad news is they're going to continue to get worse. They're going to economic deterioration is for sure. And but we do have some good news. What's that? All the refugees are going to leave and go to hell home because their war-torn hellholes are still better than here. I mean, the good news you have, Europe, is everybody's going to leave. They're going to be like, hey, where are all the refugees from the Middle East? They went home. They're like, oh, my God, this place is a pile of crap. I'm going back to my war-torn country. You guys, I mean, I may get shot, but it'd be better than living here. I'll probably get shot here, too. So the refugees are going to leave, and you with them. They'll be in Iran. They'll be in like the Sahel region of Africa. All of these Europeans coming in with knapsacks. Hey, what are you guys doing here? Could you spare a sandwich or something for a guy who's down on the... Yeah, what are you? You're Europeans. You're coming here to that region of Africa. Yeah, well, I mean, it is like nice and warm. You have a rain. Perhaps we could start a small garden or something. Maybe, create something to eat, some lettuce, some tomatoes, a little bit or something. Perhaps you could give a guy a break. They're going to get the hell out of there. They'll be running to Africa. Africa's going to have to build a wall. You know what? You're going to have leaders in Africa. They're going to look like Trump, like with blonde wigs on, going around saying, elect me and I'll build a wall to keep the Europeans out. That's what's coming. They're going to have the Africans, the Middle Easterners are going to need a wall. And the wall ain't going to be to keep their people in. It'll be to keep these starving Europeans out. What's left of them? That's where we are. I'm sorry. I don't know. People may get mad at me. And they may be like, well, Garland, how can you say that about Europe? What am I supposed to say to Europe? Hey, things are looking bright. Your future is bright. Things are rosy. Oh, it's going to go well. No, it ain't going to go well. Joe Biden in 4 years has in a way, maybe the global South may one day build a statue, all over the global South. There'll be like statues of Joe Biden. The man who freed us from imperialism and colonialism. And people will be like, how? Well, hear me out. He destroyed Europe. And we were able to grow. He wiped out Europe, and Europe couldn't come steal our uranium anymore. And so we sold it ourselves on the market. And we kicked what's left of Europe out. Now we're rich and they're impoverished. So yay, go Joe Biden. The man, the hero of the global South will be Joe Biden. Trump will come in and he will drain Europe. What's left of Europe? That's going to be his job. Whatever's left, he's draining them. It is what it is. Anyway, let me. Do we have any? No super chat. Oh, we got some super chats. We're going to add questions. Oh, thank you. I got people giving me Happy New Year's and all kinds of things. Let's start with the Sparkster. The Sparkster says, free Greenland. Free Greenland from Danish tyranny. Doggone it. I know Greenland's. I know they're looking at the U.S. saying, oh, boy, we want to be like them. Not. Let's see. Ivan. Hey, thanks a lot. Our good old Ivan B with the super sticker. Let's keep going. Hey, tonight we got Scott Ritter and Andre Martiano up at 9 Eastern Standard Time. How cool are those two guys? Klaus Votny says, fascism, merger, corporation, and state, Mussolini. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what it is, my friend. But let me say this. Always remember this. There are when I used to teach criminal justice, one of the courses I taught about crime, and people would say, "What is crime?" And I'd say, "There's many. Why do people go to get involved in crime?" And I would say there are as many reasons why people commit crimes as there are crimes. Right? There's many different crimes. If somebody says, "What's a democracy?" out there's a lot of different kinds of democracies. There's many different kinds of democracies. The governmental structure arises from the culture of a country. And therefore, a democracy in one country that will be a representation of the culture in that country, which means it's going to be different than a democracy in another country. And then you've got the U.S. empire and all of its colonies who feign democracy, who argue that they have a democracy when in fact they have an oligarchy, an oligarchic empire, right? So I'll say this with fascism in 3 different countries, even in the same country, could have different characteristics. The Chinese call themselves socialism with Chinese characteristics, whereas you can have socialism in 10 different countries, you can have democracy, you can have a monarchy in 10 different countries, and everyone could be a little bit different. So that's all I'm saying. You're right about fascism in its foundation, but there are other characteristics and idiosyncrasies in a particular expression of fascism that we could look at. Let's see. Anybody? Nothing over there. And you knew I got to check Rumble for Rumble rants because I wasn't checking for Rumble rants. And I got to check Rumble for Rumble rants. Okay, let's try. No Rumble rants. There we go. Kate TV says, Happy New Year's, Garland. Now I'm thinking about getting myself and my family the hell out of Europe. Well, that's up to you, but is what it is. Bottom line, that's that. Thank you, everyone. Numero uno. Share this on all your social media platforms. Number 2, make sure that you subscribe and that you like. And the other thing I'm going to do is here's something that's interesting that I'm going to start doing. YouTube is just unbelievable in the amount of censorship, and they'll I'll have like 1 million views and get like 3 subscribers, right? And so I'm going to start looking because they'll say, oh, you've gotten 400 subscribers this month, right? And how do you have like 700,000 views and 400 subscribers? And might I add, in the last month, my views, I'm going to go over it one day, my views, the analytics were going like this. And then all of a sudden, oh, how about this? Here's another interesting thing. 54% less subscribers this year than last year. How do you dramatically increase the amount of views, dramatically increase the amount of everything, videos you do, everything, and the amount of subscribers you have drops by more than half? Right. So I'm going to start really getting a little tighter on what's happening with YouTube here because they're slick and I mean, it's just so obvious what they're doing at any rate. So, but at any rate, thanks a lot, everybody. Last but not least, let me say this. Somebody says, I haven't been able to find this channel for a good while. Oh, absolutely. You know, you can't find it. I'll like go with friends on their computers and say, let's search and find my channel. You ain't finding it. You can't find it. Search for Garland Nixon and you'll find like Judy Garland and Richard Nixon. You're not getting notified. And how in the hell am I so stagnant? So this year, I'm going to maintain everything. I'm going to keep the numbers every month. I'm going to keep a chart with everything and just see what the numbers look like. And from now on, I'm going to keep a chart of everything, and I'll keep my own analytics. This year, I'm keeping my own analytics starting this week. So, all right, everybody. By the way, last but not least, if you can afford it, we need more people on Patreon. Of course, buy me a coffee is great. Buy me a coffee is pretty simple. You go in there, buy Garland a coffee. Some $5. How much? How many? One, two, three, whatever. And if you choose, or buy me a coffee, if you choose, you can become just like Patreon and become a monthly subscriber. So that's great. There are a lot of ways to contribute and certainly appreciate it. But if you can't contribute, that's fine. If you can't afford it, just share this on all your social media platforms and do the best you can and enjoy your family and friends. Peace. I'm out. I'll be back on today, and I definitely will be back on tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the one and only, the two and only Scott Ritter and Andre Martianoff. I'm out. I think I'm out. There we go.